Welcome back to Boruto Anime Review. This is episode number 31, and this one's called Boruto and Kagura. This one kind of wraps up most of the Hidden Mist arc, uh, because the next episode, from what I can tell from the preview I saw from it, is just an aftermath episode, basically when they go back to the village. This one continues the fight that's been going on now. It basically included the fight that's been going on for basically the brawl that's been going on now for 3 episodes. So at least they actually ended a pretty good note. Yeah, and Boruto takes on Kagura briefly, and takes him on, and eventually the scroll and we finally find out exactly what is on the scroll that Silverchair basically gave Mitsuke 2 episodes back, or at least previous episode. What is on the scroll? A confession. Yes, of the person who the main villain of this arc basically was working for. Turns out he's been seeking negotiations with the Land of Waves, which I'm kind of like, the Land of Waves. Isn't that the same place as the Great Naruto Bridge? Yeah, that it is something that, like, why in the world would it be in secret negotiations with them for? Yeah, but there actually is a kind of a reason for that, because they want to go to war. I don't know why, but they do. Yep. And also, Sal Major basically does something unexpected. Basically, they actually fight him for a good while, the wielder of him. And Boruto does some Shaolin Jutsu, some Wind Jutsu, and just sort of basically almost looks like he was going to headbutt him in the gut. And he just used like a big hand, just punish the guy's, basically crush his abdomen. And then all of a sudden his sword starts eating him. Basically gets consumed. I have never seen the sword do this before at all. Excuse me. It becomes big and bulky and kind of looks like his father. I've not heard on the show that they've not confirmed that this guy is the son of Kasume, who was one of the 7 swordsmen, one of the Katsuki. They've never confirmed on the show, but according to articles I've read, yeah, he is his son. Though he does look like him, except that Kasume had blue skin, not pinkish skin. Though he does have the gills, which he does look like him, so you gotta give him that. And then basically Chocho's sword, which basically is now basically Kagura's sword now, it does something unexpected. I've never seen the sword do this before. Apparently the sword can split in 2, because it's got 2 handles on it, so it can split in 2. And Boruto's eye does something that I have not seen since the Ghost arc. You know, where it turns like light blue, and it looks like basically thanks to this particular sword, it looks like it's reactivating Boruto's eye, which I'm like, huh, that's actually quite interesting. When I saw that, I'm like, wow, you're bringing back Boruto's eye, neat. Even if it's for a brief moment, but it's nice to see the fact that that his eye can still do that. Though I've not heard a full explanation exactly what the heck the eye is, aside from the fact that the eye basically was basically, it was done to him by the main villain of the last. He's the one who did that to him. But he wouldn't physically harm him because he's not his son. That's the only reason why. Despite the fact that the guy doesn't like Naruto at all. Yeah. And of course the guy gets defeated basically by the split Himari sword. I think that's how you pronounce it. Gets beaten by it. And then they had to, because and it turns out the reason why Chocho was missing for most of the episode, because he was evacuating the other swordsmen, basically them all handcuffed, in these square handcuffs, believe it or not. Yeah, basically they're like rectangular handcuffs that basically now in real life, basically I've seen what handcuffs look like basically in real life. They're these circular things that cops use. But the ones they use in the show, these kind of look like ancient ones that maybe Japan might use from feudal era Japan. So they're still using these old-fashioned handcuffs, which is quite neat, the fact that they are using them. Drinking some Diet Pepsi. Yeah, and Sadara is still injured, and so because of the fact she can't walk, she the other guy who was part of that group, who basically had the group turned against him, so he has to help him out. Basically, he carries Sadawa back to the hotel, and Iwambi basically has to carry Boruto. And I thought this was quite funny. Basically, he was addressing Sadara as Miss Sadara. I thought that was so funny. I hope Sadara doesn't fall for him, though. My friend Edgar thinks that Boruto and Sadara might end up together. That's just a fan theory of his. What I wanted, I don't know. The show was just it's just the early start of it, but I would like to see a little bit more development on some of the other newer characters. I know Iwambi basically has gotten into development. DK's gotten into development. Matter of fact, DK was actually absent from this episode. Yes, he was. As far as I can tell, out of the entire 31 episode series, DK has been a good chunk of the series. I think he's missed roughly about 6-7 episodes at most. I know he was absent for the Sadara. I think he was absent for the entirety of the Sadara arc. But mostly he's there for mostly episodes take place in the hit and miss. But generally he's been in most of the episodes. The one episode he only appeared in for like a brief cameo, and like that was it. But it's nice to see one. But you don't get a chance to see. This is something I didn't like about this episode, was the fact that Iwambi was fighting with one of the other 7 swordsmen, and we never got a chance to see the aftermath of that fight, like who won. And apparently Iwambi won, basically, because the battle took place off screen. I don't really get why that the animators thought this was a good idea. But yeah. Oh yeah, and it turns out that a lot of viewers probably figured this out probably already, that Shizuma basically was using Kagura all along. Which some people kind of figure that at most. So, yeah, he was being used. So, as for the other swordsman, I kind of wish we got a little more development on him, aside from, like, the only one of the 7 swordsmen, aside from the new generation of them. Aside from, well, Kagura, Susumu, I got a little bit of development for him. And, of course, the woman who is the daughter of Raiga. Aside from that, the other 7 swordsmen, the other 4, barely got anything from them. It's like, they're just basically big grunts. Like, the guy who had the axe and the hammer for a sword. Yeah. I mean, you got development like one of the weapons, but aside from that, it's like, that's the odd thing about the 7 swordsmen, is the fact that there's never been a lot of development of them. Heck, even the previous generation version of them, the one that Zabuza was part of, you never knew much about these guys at all. That's the odd thing about the 7 swordsmen. There's so much mystery surrounding these people, and the fact that there's never been any time to take to actually develop these characters and actually delve into their backstories. The only one of the 7 swordsmen who got a chance to delve over their backstories was Zabuza. That was it. He was the only one, and like one other one who was basically Kasumi's predecessor holding that big salamander sword. Which it's nice to see the sword in action again. Yeah, and the sword itself, as far as I can tell, basically turning against Susumu before it consumes him. Yeah, that I have seen before with Kasume. But the thing sort of eating him and basically become part of his arm, that is completely new. I have never seen that before at all. That is something that's a new feature, something they probably came up with the show. But a lot of the other swords, from what I can tell, they pretty much act the same way, except for the Executioner's Blade for some reason. Yeah, they don't show off its ability where whenever it cuts people and blood gets on it, it gets much more bigger. Here, that doesn't happen. Yeah, that's the only other disappointing thing about this fight, is the fact you have the Executioner's Blade, probably one of the best blades of all the swords of the 7 swordsmen, and yet it doesn't do anything. Yeah, you see it swung around a few times, but yeah, it's like it never cut into anybody. It's just a big long sword. It's kind of like basically that these 7 swordsmen, with the exception of a few of them, basically were just their big cannon fodder, and the swords themselves, aside from, well, the one that went with the needle, that one I thought was kind of, it's an odd device, but it's an interesting tool for combat, because its thread can cut through flesh. It's good for combat, but at least that one you got a chance to see what the heck the thing does, and the fact that you get a little bit of development. As for the woman who actually held it, we know nothing about this woman at all. Yeah, these are just, well, with the exception of the one who holds the Fang swords, we have 4 random people who are just chosen, who were just picked at random to be the new 7 swordsmen, along with the daughter Raiga, Kagura, and Susumu. Yeah, 4 random guys who we know nothing about at all. Maybe Kishimoto basically can do like a spin-off basically to all these characters' backstories, because it would be interesting, because I don't get why not. I mean, I get maybe why they went with manga right now, because right now the Boruto manga, is set like right after the Boruto film. As far as I can tell, I do not know when they're gonna get to it, but some people theorize that we might get a retelling of the Boruto film in the actual series, with right after the Sadaru arc was finished up. That apparently didn't happen because this arc came up. But it was a pretty good episode nonetheless. But like I said, the only disappointing factor is a wand-based fight. Basically, it got some screen time in the previous episode. This episode, we don't get a chance to see the conclusion of it, because he's absent for most of the episode until like the last like few minutes. And Chocho, kind of the same thing. We don't get a chance to see how he evacuates people. Like we don't get a chance to see a brief flashback. Nope. It would have been nice, but I guess not. But it's like certain things, basically, it's like maybe they plan on doing a flashback for the episode, like showing how he got people out of the mist and put them in the handcuffs, and of course Sadaru getting healed up, stuff like that. And I noticed that the woman who's Raiga's, I noticed she was lying right next to her, because she also fell unconscious after Sadaru's battle with her. Yeah, they both fell unconscious basically after Sadaru won. Yeah. Good episode, but just those 2 disappointing factors of this episode. But it looks like next week's episode they're going back to the Hidden Leaf, and Boruto's in trouble with his sister because he forgot to give her a souvenir. That's the plot of the next episode. Maybe he's gonna go back to Hidden Mist briefly to get her a souvenir. I don't know. It's just a possibility. Okay. In case you're wondering, no, there's not another episode of the Boruto manga come out this week, because the Boruto manga is monthly. So the next time you probably get a chance to see an episode featuring the next chapter probably won't be until whenever they release the next chapter. I'd say probably in a few weeks. It just depends exactly when they release it, because they release these things once a month, and the chapters tend to range. The chapters themselves are 40 pages long. It's a long chapter, but they're long chapters. But I think it was starting with chapter, I think it was 13, I think it was, where basically it moves beyond the film, because the first 12 chapters are just retelling the film, with the exception of the opening 5 pages of chapter 1, which basically was turned into the opening couple minutes of the first episode of Boruto, when they show Boruto in the future fighting some guy in the villages and ruins, and the Hokage Mountain's basically been desecrated, with the exception of the third Hokage's face. Like all the rest of them basically have been like scratched off, whatever. But the third Hokage's face is perfectly fine, which is weird. Probably because it's been damaged before, after the third Hokage died. That's just a theory. But yeah, that's really it for this episode. Stay tuned when I get a chance to do. Stay tuned next week for episode 32. Quest for Souvenirs. Yeah, the way it looks like it's going to be a one-shot episode. Not going to be started for the next arc, but that's the way it looks for next week's episode, okay? And until then, I will see you there. Bye.